Okay, let's forget about memorizing a bunch of dates and battles for a second. What if I told you that you could actually see the hidden code that runs entire civilizations? Well, today we're diving into a really powerful framework that does just that. It helps us see the predictable patterns behind, the rise and fall of entire empires. So it really begs the question, right? What actually drives history? Is it all just one random chaotic event after another, or just maybe, is there a deeper logic at play? A predictable pattern that, if we could just wrap our heads around it, might even help us see what's coming next. Traditionally, there have been these two big competing ideas. On one hand, you've got the great man theory. This is the idea that history is really just shaped by these incredible, powerful individuals, your Caesars, your Genghis Khans. But on the other hand, there's the structural forces theory, which says, no. It's the deeper currents like geography and economics that are the real drivers. So which one is it? Well, the framework we're digging into today says, hey, what if it's both? And it shows us exactly how they fit together. All right, so let's start at the very foundation of this whole model. We're going to call this the hardware. And this is the physical, totally non-negotiable reality that every single civilization is built on. The core idea here is actually pretty simple. Geography is destiny. Seriously. The best way to think about it is like a computer. The physical landscape, the mountains, the rivers, the coastlines, that's the hardware. I mean, you can't run the latest, most advanced software on a clunky old machine, right? And in the same way, you're not going to build a great naval empire if you're stuck in a landlocked country. So geography doesn't just influence history, it actually sets the absolute limits and defines all the opportunities a civilization is ever going to have. And believe me, this hardware has massive real-world consequences. I mean, look at Uruk in Mesopotamia. It became this incredibly rich trade hub simply because of its central location. Then you have the Levant, a natural crossroads of empire, which meant it was constantly getting conquered and reshaped by whoever was passing through. And then there's Britain, basically an island fortress, protected from all the chaos happening in Europe, which let it develop in its own unique way. The hardware, you see, really does set the course. Okay, so if geography is the hardware, then what's the engine that's actually running on it? Well, as we move up one layer in our model, we find this timeless, recurring conflict that has been driving history for millennia. And this brings us to this incredible core dynamic, the eternal struggle between the settled, comfortable empire and the hungry, energetic people on the borderlands. The empire, you see, it has it all: mass, organization, resources. But over time, it just gets slow, rigid, corrupt. Meanwhile, the borderlands, they're poor, they're disorganized, but man, are they bursting with energy, adaptability, and just pure ambition. They have to be, just to survive out there. And this dynamic, it creates a surprisingly predictable cycle. Here's how it goes. First, the borderland folks trade with the empire. Maybe they even work as mercenaries for them. But then, as the empire starts to weaken from its own internal decay, the borderlanders, they smell blood in the water. They see their chance. They invade, they conquer the collapsing core, and boom, they become the new elite. They are the new empire. And then, you guessed it, over a few centuries, the whole darn cycle starts all over again. This is the story of the Mongols conquering China, but it's a pattern you see repeated all over the world throughout history. So we've got the hardware, that's geography, and we've got the engine, that conflict between empire and borderlands. But what's actually guiding a civilization's behavior? What's in their head? This brings us to what might be the most crucial layer of all, the invisible software that literally tells a people who they are. Now, the key concept here is mythology. And I want to be really clear, we are not talking about Zeus throwing lightning bolts or stories about monsters. No. In this framework, mythology is a civilization's operating system. It's the shared reality, the collective worldview that dictates, pretty much everything. It defines what's good, what's true, what's worth fighting for. It's the underlying code that makes a Roman and not, say, an Egyptian. Let's look at a few examples of this code in action. For the Roman Republic, their core myth was about their founder, Lucius Brutus, sacrificing his own sons to save the state. That created an incredibly powerful guiding principle. The Republic is everything, period. Now, Mesopotamia had the Epic of Gilgamesh, which coded a totally different reality. That real immortality isn't living forever, it's about the legacy you leave behind. And of course, there's the American dream, the myth of going from rags to riches, which created an entire operating system built on relentless optimism and individual hustle. And here's why this is so unbelievably important. A mythology isn't just some dusty old story. It's a command. It's a behavioral blueprint. Just listen to this quote from the source material. It shows how that Roman myth basically says, hey, if the founder of our republic can sacrifice his own family to make sure the republic survives, well, you can too. It literally defines what sacrifice, duty, and greatness mean for millions of people. But here's the thing about operating systems. They get old. They become outdated. Sometimes they just crash. So what happens then? How does an entire civilization reboot? Well, this is where we see the great man idea come back, but in a very specific and very different role. Not as a conqueror, but as a programmer. And this process of a massive cultural revolution, it follows a pattern. First, the old operating system, the old mythology, it just stops working. It doesn't give people meaning anymore. It can't explain the world they're living in. And into that empty space, that void, steps a revolutionary thinker, a great programmer. They introduce a brand new vision, a new mythology, a new shared reality. And just like that, the civilization is completely reborn, running on this powerful new code. So who are these programmers? Well, think about someone like Dante. He didn't just write a cool poem about hell, he fundamentally rewrote the source code of meaning for the West, shifting it away from the fear of God and towards the idea that human love and imagination are divine forces. Or Shakespeare, he didn't just write plays, he turned language itself into a tool for creating reality, making the entire English imagination more open and fluid. And then you have Freud, who gave us a whole new mythology of the self, making the hidden subconscious world the new center of our reality. And this quote here just perfectly captures Dante's revolution, the idea that what gives life to the world isn't God, but our imagination. That by imagining the world becomes alive. I mean, think about that. He was saying the divine spark wasn't some external thing to be afraid of, but something inside of us that we needed to grow. Our imagination isn't just for fun and games. It's the engine that makes the world real and meaningful. He literally rewrote the code of Western consciousness. Okay. So now we have the complete framework in place. Let's bring it all together and see how we can actually use this lens to make sense of the world we're living in right now. So here's the big takeaway. History isn't random. It's not just a string of disconnected events. It's a system. It's the story of civilizations running on their own unique cultural code, limited by their geographical hardware and constantly pushed and pulled by that eternal conflict between the Empire and the Borderlands, until one day, a great programmer shows up and rewrites the code for everybody. And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative question to chew on. Our modern world, you could say, runs on an operating system, obsessed with the cult of the self. I mean, everything is about self-discovery, self-improvement, self-empowerment. So if that's the code our civilization is running on right now, what do you think that says about where we're headed?